This is Hear Me Out. I'm Celeste Headley. This show is about speaking your mind even if your opinion is unpopular, but we know from empirical research that your real life is probably much more monolithic. We surround ourselves with people who agree with us because that's more comfortable. But whether you agree with your friends or not, friendship is a relationship, and relationships are complicated. We're often looking for or maybe clinging to the idea of the one, even platonically. And yet, relationships change. They sometimes end. So is the idea of a best friend forever really an exercise in wanting the impossible?
We all have different places that we can fill in each other's lives, and nobody has to be the best among them. Why do we have to rank them? I don't think it necessarily benefits us to do that in something that's so emotional as friendship.
Kristen Meinzer joins Hear Me Out once again in just a moment. Stay with us.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. From the launch your online shop stage, all the way to the we just hit 1 million orders stage. No matter what stage you're in, Shopify's there to help you grow. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/special offer, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/special offer.
Welcome back to Hear Me Out. I'm Celeste Headley. Look, if there's anything the last couple years of American life has thrown into stark relief, it just might be the importance of having a support network, people you can depend on when you need help, and sometimes to tell you like it is when social media keeps you in this delusion of fake lives and fake things. There are a lot of different kinds of friends. That said, the people you talk to daily, the people you check in with every few weeks, maybe the people you see only if you happen to be in their city, and sometimes friendships end. Sometimes that's for good reason. But the question today is whether, when it's time for a friendship to end, it should end with a fizzle or a bang, or whether those friendships are the most important thing for you to invest your time and energy into. Our guest is the returning Kristen Meinzer, a favorite, an author, podcast host. Welcome back. Always so lovely to hear your voice, Kristen.
Oh, thank you so much, Celeste.
So, Kristen, for those who don't know you, tell us what you do.
I host a number of podcasts, and one of my podcasts right now is called How to Be Fine, and this is a show about being okay. You don't have to be the best, you don't have to be the most optimal, you don't need to be the most productive, but it's a show about being fine, and all of this season, we are focusing on issues related to friendship and the loneliness epidemic, as our Surgeon General is calling it. And one topic that has come up again and again on our show is BFFs and BFF breakups. And so I'm here to talk about that today.
Okay, so give us your elevator pitch. What is the unpopular opinion that you bring today?
My unpopular opinion is that BFFs are overrated. The best part is overrated. The forever is overrated. Friends are great, but they don't need to be your best and they don't need to be forever.
You know, let's start picking this apart. I mean, first of all in honor of transparency, you and I have been friends, not best friends, but friends since 2009.
Yes, that's right. We met in the late summer of 2009, I believe, early fall.
I think so. So let's start with that best part, because look, that's a huge part of our culture. People have notebooks that say besties. They get necklaces where one will have half of a heart and the other will have I know you've seen all this merch.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Of course, I've had some of that merch myself. I absolutely have. It's something that we hold up and celebrate in rom-coms, in chick lit. It is everywhere. It is something that all women in particular are supposed to have, right?
Yeah.
But first and foremost, let's get to the best part. When we have a singular best friend, B in capital, we're essentially asking one person to be all things at all times to us, to check more boxes and wear more hats than any one person should, in my opinion. And that's especially true if we decide that our spouse is our best friend, which is a very popular thing to say in our culture. Oh, my husband is my best friend. I love him.
I never buy that. I got to say, I never buy it.
No, and I don't live by that. My husband knows damn well he's not my best friend, and I am not his best friend. He already has enough other jobs on his plate as a husband. He has to cook the meals. He has to be, supportive in this way and that way. He has to be handsome and attractive to me. He has a lot of other things to do. He does not need to be my best friend. He has other best friends. He has plenty of other friends, and I have plenty of other friends.
Okay, so if somebody has a best friend, though, are you telling them... Are you pooping all over best friends? Like if let's say that somebody doesn't have a huge number of friends, they have some casual friends that they see every now and again, but they have one ride or die, right? That one friend who they've known since school or whatever it may be. Are you pooping on that?
I'm not pooping on that exactly so much as saying it's limiting. There are a lot of limits to that. And one of the limits is it's setting up a ranking system. When we use the word best, it's implying that there's only one. It's a singular thing. This is above all others. It is the best. And I personally don't like to bring in rankings into my relationships with people. The people who I've known since grade school, are they actually better than the people who've been in my book club with me for 12 years? Are they better than the friendship you and I have, Celeste? No, they're all different kinds of friendships, and they all provide different things. There are certain things that I hope that you and I get out of each other, Celeste, that don't have to be the same thing as that ride or die person. And hopefully that ride or die person doesn't have to provide all the same things that my pop culture fanatic friend provides for me. Maybe this person doesn't want to go to Golden Con with me and celebrate the Golden Girls, and that's okay. I have somebody else who does that with me. We all have different places that we can fill in each other's lives, and nobody has to be the best among them. Why do we have to rank them? I just hate rankings, and I don't like categorizing people like that. And I don't think it necessarily benefits us to do that in something that's so emotional as friendship.
I get the whole ranking thing. That makes perfect sense to me. But another, like a synonym for best in this sense is closest, right? And there is a benefit to having somebody, and there very few people have more than one or two of these, who knows everything about you. I was thinking about this the other day because I got stung by a hornet.
Oh my God, Celeste.
One of those those giant European hornets.
Oh God.
The really big ones that are like over an inch long.
Oof.
And usually hornets don't leave their stingers. Maybe you have to put a content warning on this. I'm not trying to upset anybody, but it left its stinger in me, and it was in a place on my body that I could not see. And so
ouch.
I was sitting there thinking to myself, my God, how many people in my life do I ask to get a stinger out of my tush? Like there's a small number of people who are like there to pick you up from surgery, who know all the crappy things that you've done to other people. Like, I don't think those are the kind of things you need to be sharing with everybody. There should be a limited number of them. And if you think of it in terms of closest, is that better for you if we think of it as the people who are closest to us?
I'm going to counter that, Celeste, with this idea. Isn't there also a real benefit to knowing people and loving people who we don't know all of their history and they don't know all of ours? They're meeting us where we're at right now without the baggage. They're not loving us because of past accomplishments or because we did this and that together in third grade. And we can be very close with them too without having to put a label like best on it. There is room, as I see it, to have lots of people we're close to in very different ways, and lots of people we're not close to, but who build out our village for us. We don't need to be that close with everybody, but we can be close with lots of different people. And I am willing to bet, Celeste, I know some of your neighbors. If you just sent out a group text to your neighborhood, I bet 30 people would show up and say, let me look at your butt and help you.
Yes, they absolutely. I mean, that's fair. That is fair.
Your neighbors would be there in a heartbeat. They don't need to be your quote unquote best to do that.
It is
and I
absolutely
think that's
true
for most of us. Most of us don't even realize how many people are willingly there to help out if we just ask them to. A lot of people are willing to do things for us that we don't even realize. And on the flip side, I know you, Celeste, I know I, Celeste, we try to help out in all sorts of ways, even with people we don't know well. I mean, we're both like very active in our community fridge communities, for example, right? I mean, we're
Yes.
willing to help people, and they don't need to call us their best friend for us to help them and feed them, right?
Yeah. On the other hand, I'm trying to think about all the people who are not like you. Like, one of the reasons that there's so many people that would be willing to be helping me out, because I'm that type of person, right? Like, I happen to be the kind of person that people call when they're in trouble. I'm a problem solver, right? And it doesn't matter how close we are, I'm going to be there. Like, I remember some person saying, if you're doing a trapeze act, Celeste is the one you want holding the net. And you are the very same way, right? Like, we show up. But not everybody is like us. Not everybody is able to share that kind of social energy with a larger number of people, and their list of people they could text to get help might be quite short.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a fair point. And I am not trying to poo-poo those relationships, but I also do want to validate people who don't have a best friend out there. This is something we hear from a lot of How to Be Fine listeners. People who write in and say, what's wrong with me? Why don't I have a best friend? The last time I had a best friend was in grade school. Why don't I have a best friend? And I just want to tell all of them, and anybody listening to the show, nothing is wrong with you. You are lovable just as you are. And it's totally fine and it's totally healthy to have a mix of friends. A lot of people after grade school don't have the be-all, end-all singular best friend. That's totally fine not to. It doesn't mean you're broken. It may just mean that you have a wider net right now. And if you want to, you can deepen that net. You can with the existing people you have or with new people. But you don't need to have that singular be-all, end-all best friend, just as you don't have to have a romantic partner. I think that's kind of a comparable thing in our society. You need to have someone who's a soulmate, whether it's a best friend or a romantic partner. And I'm saying you don't have to. It's okay to not have that in your life. It doesn't mean you're worse than anyone else or less socially or emotionally developed to not have that. It's okay not to.
Okay, so let me get into a little bit of research here because that's me. Research shows that having those, I guess I don't have a problem with ditching the word best. Right. So
good. I just won. And end of episode.
No, because we're going to also talk about breaking up with friends. But,
yes.
Research shows that close friendships, what a sociologist might call an intimate relationship, and they don't mean that in the sexual way, are really important to your health. People who have them live longer and live more healthily. Yes. They are less likely to develop dementia. They're less likely to have diabetes. They're less likely to have heart disease.
But they're less likely to die in a heat stroke. They're less likely to
get burglarized. If you know your neighbors well, you're less likely to get burglarized.
Yeah, and they tend to be happier people.
Yes, and better friends. Like, they're not just happier, but they're actually better in all their relationships. Okay.
Yes.
But one of the world's experts on this is Robin Dunbar, who, if people don't know him, he's an evolutionary psychologist. He's studied this for a very, very long time. And he says that the highest number of intimate relationships you can have, close friends you can have, is 5. That you can only juggle 5 at a time, really. So I wonder what you think about that. He says that these are limits set by how much time and effort we can invest in relationships. And basically these close friendships require that kind of investment, or they're not close anymore.
Yes, and I have heard that stat from that expert. We've had other experts on our show who, though, have also pointed to evidence that the more friends we have, the happier we tend to be. Social brokers tend to be the happiest. They're the ones who tend to be the hub of the wheel from which all of the prongs come out of that, right? Great connectors, the people who introduce people to other people. And they tend to be happier, but it's not something that... But obviously that can be exhausting, having that many friends all the time. And one of our experts explained that successful social brokers, one thing that makes them successful is while they're introducing all of those other people, they're actually creating less labor for themselves, so that when they're getting together with the people who are most intimate in their lives, it doesn't always have to be a one-on-one. And that way they're capable of having more than 5 very intimate relationships. Maybe they get together with their squad every Thursday, for example, and sit in the backyard around the bonfire and drink tea and roast marshmallows or whatever. And then maybe they have different people that they have on a group text and so on. So those social brokers are capable of having more than the 5 intimate friends. And, yes, statistically, they're supposedly happier. And I want to be careful not to also say everyone has to have 1 million friends too, because
Right.
that's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is I think we're all capable of having a variety of different kinds of friendships and not necessarily ones with only this number of people and only these who we consider best. I think that there's room for lots of people in our lives and that those lots of people, research suggests, can make us happier.
All right, there is so much more to talk about here with my friend, Kristen Meinzer. We're going to take a break, though, and we'll be back in just a moment. This is Hear Me Out.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. From the launch your online shop stage, all the way to the we just hit 1 million orders stage. No matter what stage you're in, Shopify's there to help you grow. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/special offer, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/special offer.
Making everyone happy on vacation isn't easy, but you know what is? Going to Aruba. All you have to do is walk out your door to find pristine pools, relaxing white sand beaches, and an island teeming with outdoor activities that'll put a smile on any face. You won't just feel great, you'll all feel great, filled with a calmer, more peaceful vibe that radiates Aruba's warmth. And the best part is, it never fades. That's the Aruba effect. Plan your family trip at aruba.com.
Welcome back. I'm Celeste Headley, and this is Hear Me Out, a podcast from Slate. I'm talking to Kristen Meinzer about BFFs and why she thinks they need to die in flames. No, I'm kidding. Why she thinks we shouldn't call them best friends, but also she thinks we should say we're going to have friends forever, even those closest to us, right? Like that's your opinion is that even the closest friends we have, we shouldn't think that's a forever relationship.
Yeah, I mean, just let's talk logistics here in human bodies. Human bodies don't last forever. We sadly lose people to death. I have lost loved ones. I've had friends die as young as in their 20s and 30s. It's terrible that people die, and we can love them desperately, and loving them won't necessarily keep them from dying. And we are going to die and also probably break a lot of people's hearts when we die, Celeste. It's just part of being alive and loving people, right? But on top of that, friends break up sometimes. As a matter of fact, we had Chelsea Devantas on How to Be Fine, and she brought this statistic to us. 80% of women have gone through a best friend breakup. That BFF, the second F isn't in there for a lot of people, okay? I have gone through a best friend breakup. Many people I know have been through a best friend breakup. It's a very normal occurrence. We just don't talk about it very much. Friendships end, and oftentimes they end for good reasons. Maybe it's because those friendships were codependent. Maybe it's because they were based only on history and not who we are in the present. I've definitely seen that in friendships. Maybe the friendship required both of you to play certain roles that you grew out of. That happens all the time in friendships. In any case, to paraphrase a book title, it's called a breakup because it's broken. And sometimes when something's broken, it's better to part ways and to move on and maybe appreciate what that friendship was in the past, or maybe say good riddance. That wasn't good for me, but it was a good placeholder because I was new in town or because I didn't know anybody else at work or whatever it was. It's okay for things to end. And I'm not going to say it's easy. Breaking up with friends is painful. All breakups are hard to do, right? But they also leave room for us to meet other people. They also hopefully teach us a little bit about ourselves and what we're willing to tolerate or not tolerate next, and how we ourselves can be better friends. So it's not that breakups are always bad. And the fact is they're very normal. Again, that statistic is 80% of us. So if we're going to be real adults here and talk about real relationships, part of that real talk is accepting this is a normal part of life. Breaking up happens. Forever doesn't have to be the case. I can still cherish deeply certain friendships I had that ended, more than a decade ago. It doesn't mean they were bad friendships. It just means they were friendships for then.
So, okay, I think we found a place of agreement and then a place of disagreement here, because I absolutely also believe friendships can and should end. And I have been through friend breakups in the past. But here's the thing for me. I find that most people don't know how to break up in a healthy way with anybody. And so I'll just say, sometimes I will let a friendship die on the vine, and I don't feel the need to say anything. Mostly because...
Absolutely. A lot of the times, that's just the best thing to do. It's the easiest, and it feels the most natural. I have nothing negative to say about that. Yeah.
Oh,
sometimes
okay,
that's
so
just...
we're in agreement. Because I feel like when you make it an official breakup, people say stuff that can't be unsaid.
Yeah. No, I think sometimes things just die on the vine. Unfortunately, that happens, but sometimes a conversation doesn't need to be had. It's kind of similar to maybe I went out with somebody a few times, and do we need to have a giant talk because we don't really feel like going out with each other anymore? We can both see the writing on the wall. There you go.
But, okay, so here's the thing. I had I basically broke up with a friend I'd known for years and years and years. Do you still feel, or the opinion that it's okay for me to let that wither out without a comment made?
It really depends on what that friendship turned into over time. Just because somebody is friends with you for a very long time doesn't mean they're somebody who you check in with every day, every week, or even every month. Maybe you gradually start drifting apart. Maybe you have different priorities in your life. Maybe you are spending more and more time with other people. And I don't think a conversation needs to be had with every friend we're drifting apart from, even if we've had that friend in our life for over 10 years.
But I can absolutely imagine the sitcom storyline where someone just stops, calling or whatever a friend, and that friend confronts them and says, you owed me at least the truth. You could have just said blah, 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 right? Like, there's always this complaint that we have an obligation, that we owe them some kind of goodbye, some closure.
And how would you like that conversation to go if somebody was saying it to you, Celeste?
If somebody was saying to me that I owed them a goodbye?
No. If you felt someone owed you a goodbye, what would you want them to say in that goodbye? The reason I'm asking is because I think a lot of people in theory say, I want them to explain and to give me closure. But then when you put them on the spot, a lot of them don't actually really know what they want. They want to have the friend back maybe, and they just don't want the friendship to end. They don't really necessarily want what they consider closure. Closure doesn't necessarily exist for every ending. Closure is something that you can come up with for yourself. It's not necessarily something the other person is going to come up with for you all the time.
Okay. Let's go back to this forever idea, though, then. Because, I've also read research saying that one of the reasons having siblings can be very healthy for you is because there's somebody who has seen you through all stages of your life, who remembers what you took joy in when you were a teenager, that can remind you of who you have been and has shared memories. There's a real benefit to having shared memories with others. So that would argue that we should try a little harder to hold on to our long-term friends. I find it's quite easy to let friendships wither. I mean, as we've mentioned, they require investment and effort. And I think it's easy for months to go by and me say, oh my God, I haven't talked to so-and-so in forever. So perhaps we should be a little bit more careful about sustaining those friendships.
Oh, yes, absolutely. If they are friendships we want to sustain, there's real beauty in that. I mean, my friend Dave, I sat next to him in math class, Mrs. Lang's math class, when we were 10, and he is still a friend to this day. And every time I'm back in Minnesota, we see each other. And every once in a blue moon, he'll just text me a funny meme. And I love him to death. He means so much to me. We're not the same people, though, that we were when we were 10 and when we first met. And we're not the same people we were when we were roommates in college. We're different people now. And we don't necessarily need to be each other's, late night confidants or whatnot. But I'll always cherish that friendship. I mean, maybe always, we'll see. But I cherish that friendship for the history we have. But I think it's important to do those things that Dave and I do, to touch base, even if it's just sending a silly meme, to see each other whenever we're in the same town and so on. But he doesn't need to necessarily be my best friend at this point. He is not a part of my day-to-day life as much as I love him. He hasn't seen me over the years evolve into the Kristen Meinzer I am in 2024. Remember, he met me decades ago. And so I think there's also space for different people in my life who are meeting me where I'm at right now. And I really cherish that. They're not looking at me because of what I was in high school. They're not judging me based on how people judged me at a different point in my life. They're judging me based on what I bring to the table right now and who I am now. And I think there's something special in that we oftentimes overlook as we talk about our oldest, dearest BFFs. Sometimes our oldest doesn't mean they're the best. And that doesn't mean I don't love those oldest. But I don't necessarily think we have to always put them on the pedestal.
All right, well, we're going to take another quick break. There is still yet more to talk about with Kristen Meinzer, and we will be back in a moment. I'm Celeste Headley. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Josh Levine, one of the hosts of Slate's weekly sports show, Hang Up and Listen. Every Monday, I'm joined by Joel Anderson, who you might know from Slate's Slow Burn podcast, and Stefan Fatsis. This summer, we'll be diving into the Paris Olympics, watching Simone Biles, Sha'Carri Richardson, and Victor Wembanyama, obsessing over track, team handball, and breakdancing, and talking about the Olympic Committee's Russia ban and sex testing in elite sports. Check out Hang Up and Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Hear Me Out, a podcast from Slate. And today we're talking about friends with my friend, Kristen Meinzer. Now, Kristen, we were just talking about the fact that sometimes your oldest friend is not the healthiest friend. And I mean, I think all of this is true. And you keep saying, it depends. And that's another thing we agree on. Every relationship is unique. There's no encyclopedia that can tell you what to do in every situation you're going to have with another human being, right? But I will say that I find there is a tendency sometimes for people to get to very easily let go of relationships that challenge them, that could make them better. And I'm saying that because, look, we're in an election year, right? It is very common for people to ask me as a conversational expert, can I stop talking to this person because they're voting for fill in the blank? And my answer always is no. Who they vote for is not who they are. So it depends on how they treat you. That's in the end, that's what matters. And so this is what I come back to you is like I can imagine someone listening to you and thinking that you're giving them absolution to let go of people that they disagree with.
Yeah. I'm not saying let go of everybody you disagree with, but if they're disagreeing on things that are about your humanity, if they are in disagreement with you about whether or not it's okay to, let's say, behave in ways that are abusive, I think it's totally fair to say, nope, this isn't it anymore, or to have some space from that person. I think that, we have disagreements, and it would be so boring to live life if we always 100% all agreed with each other. We also would probably never learn anything if there was no disagreement, right? Disagreement can lead to curiosity. It can lead to questions. It can lead to growth. I'm not anti-disagreement. I think disagreement, it's just going to happen, and it's part of life, and it's good. But I am saying that not every relationship is healthy. Not every relationship needs to serve us forever. Some relationships are bad for us, and it's okay to say, that's enough of that. I'm going to step back a little bit from this, or I'm going to step back from it entirely. I think that's the right thing to do, especially if it has to do with our emotional or physical safety, especially if we feel like this person isn't seeing me for who I am now or meeting me where I'm at now. If there's, one of my biggest pet peeves is when there's jealousy in a friendship. And I don't want to ever be in a friendship where I feel like I'm with somebody who thinks I'm competing with them or feels like we're competing with each other.
No
That's
one can
something that
compete with you, Kristen. No.
there are certain dynamics that I find very uncomfortable and unhealthy. And I have, over the years, made peace with that's enough of a reason for me to be okay stepping back from them. I think in the past I used to say, I have to forgive their insecurities and their foibles. I have to be okay with this. I just will make sure that I'm not sounding like I'm too happy in life because that makes them feel intimidated, like I'm trying to brag about my life. So I'll downplay my joy around them. And you know what? If my friends think I'm competing with them and putting them down by talking about what's good in my life, I reached a point where I realized those aren't real friends. Those aren't people who are cheering for me like I'm cheering for them. And why would I keep people in my life who aren't cheering for me? Why would I do that?
Well, I mean, the elephant in the room here is family, right? Because for some people, their family members are their best friends. And I am a big one because my family doesn't like me on, cutting your family loose if you have to, right? I mean, and
I've done the same thing, Celeste. There are certain family members I've not talked with for over 30 years in my life. Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is that with family, people are always coming up to me and saying, you're going to repair this. You should go talk to her. It's worth talking to her. And it feels like some of these things apply to friends as well as family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I believe there's always more family and there's always more friends out there for all of us. And I define family maybe in looser terms than some people. And I don't think you need to be a blood relation. I mean, I don't know any blood relations. I'm adopted. Come on. And I just think family can be a broader concept. It can be a lot of different people. And there's always room for more. And I'm not going to run out of ways to love people. And hopefully they won't run out of ways to love me. I think there's always room within us to have connection with others. And we don't necessarily have to force ourselves to connect to those people because their name is on our birth certificate. We don't have to force ourselves to do that. It's okay. There are other people who will love you and treat you right.
So before we go, I want to get back to something you mentioned at the very start, which is how gendered this is.
Yes. Yes.
And I really have to say, it's rare for me to hear a guy describe another guy as, or even woman, as their BFF. And also there's a push as women embrace a feminist mindset. There's a push to let friends fill in that support network where in the past decades they might have been expected to only look to their husband for those things. In other words, we know that through research, the demographic that is the happiest and the healthiest in old age are the women who are unmarried and don't have kids.
Yes.
So
yes. That's been shown again and again.
Again and again and again. And so one of the things that you hear people say all the time is that for women, their friends are filling in that gap. Right? And so I wonder what you make of this, that if women are looking to their friends to fill in this gap left, personally, I argue with the idea that without a man, there's a gap.
Agreed. Totally agree with you, Celeste, on that one.
I am very happily divorced. But if, a lot of women are looking to friends for that, that would argue for finding that one special person that you age with. Finding that one special person.
Why just one? Why can't we be like the Golden Girls? Why can't we have a squad? Why can't we have a community or a village? And
because then we'll be burned as witches.
And just one more thing, to go back to the sad detail of death here. I look at my mother-in-law, who's in her late 70s. She lives in a wonderful retirement resort community, which is fantastic. And friends of hers die all the time, unfortunately. And she feels so fortunate to live in this community where she has lots of friends. And there are lots of people she can call in a bind. And there are lots of people who she met as a full-on older adult who maybe she wasn't friends with from the time she was 6 years old, but who are meeting her where she's at now. They're in a similar spot in life, and they have built a bond around what they're going through right now, and they're there for each other. And honestly, it makes me and my husband feel way better about the fact that we're not there with her. She's across the world in New Zealand, and we can't be there for her all the time. And a lot of her best friends, or what she used to call her best friends, can't either because they're dead now. And she has all of these new people in her life now who she loves deeply. And I see her as a real inspiration. Friends don't have to be forever. You can have new friends, and they can complete your life in all sorts of ways you didn't imagine. And she definitely feels that, and I aspire to that someday.
So the headline, Kristen Meinzer says, have a lot of friends because your friends are going to die left and right. No, I'm kidding. I will end by saying that let no one think that Kristen is saying you don't have to be close friends with people. Kristen and I have been good friends for a long time, and she is the best type of friend to have. I will say best.
And Celeste, you are a wonderful friend. And I know everybody who listens to the show feels like they are listening to a friend each week when they hear you talk.
They are. Yeah. Anyhow, thanks again. I really appreciate it. As you know, Kristen, our listeners are vocal. They're going to give you some opinions here.
I will accept all opinions. And I just feel very grateful to be back on the show, Celeste. It was so nice to talk with you again and see your beautiful face, as always.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you.
We always want to hear from you, and I especially want to hear your ideas and your philosophy about friendship. Have you ever broken up with a friend? Have you ever broken up with a best friend? Do you have a best friend? What's the platonic ideal when it comes to friendship? Let me know. I want to hear all the tea. It's hearmeout@slate.com. Now, a couple weeks ago, we had Brian Stelter on the show. He was talking about all of the turmoil at the Washington Post and what all of this might mean about the future of journalism. Part of that conversation involved the idea of micropayments. Think about paying per article instead of buying a subscription to a newspaper, for example. A listener named Deb resonated with that conversation, and she emailed this. Oh my goodness, yes. Why isn't there a micropayments plan for journalism? I do subscribe to 3 newspapers, actually, the New York Times, WAPO, and the Philadelphia Inquirer. I can't afford to subscribe to every newspaper in the country. I've been saying I want micropayments for at least 20 years. I suppose the issue that the smaller folks all fear is that they'll lose regular subscribers who will read it max a couple times a week and won't gain enough in per article payments. There is demand for something that isn't there right now. That is for sure. Deb, I agree with you. You are right. You're even more right because I agree with you. No, I'm kidding. Send us your thoughts. We always want to hear from you, whether you agree with me or you don't. It's hearmeout@slate.com. Hear Me Out is a podcast from Slate. The show is produced by Maura Currie. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations, and Alicia Montgomery is the VP of Slate Audio. I'm your host, Celeste Headlee. Until next time, speak your mind, but please keep it open.
Okay, you say, I want some breakfast. Your so-called boyfriend says, we got eggs in the fridge. Obviously, when you say breakfast, you mean McDonald's. Definitely a side-eye situation.
Bring home the bacon, steak patty, or others with a BOGO for $1 breakfast. Only in the app. Limited time only at participating McDonald's. Valid once a day. Must opt into rewards. Visit McD app for details.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.